Hey, what's going on? It's me, Mex, and I hope you're doing good. And today, I will talk about what I think are the top 5 most emotional moments from Hajime no Ippo. And I will be ranking these moments from least to most emotional, but all of them could realistically be placed anywhere, depending on who you ask. And of course, there will be spoilers for a lot of this series, but without further ado, let's get into it. Ippo's loss to Date really was the first soul-crushing moment of the show, as for a while, Ippo looked unstoppable after having a 10-match win streak, only for him to fight the Japanese featherweight boxing champion Eiji Date and lose. Man, seeing Ippo push himself to get up after the fight was already over, to congratulate Date for winning, and seeing Ippo swallow his pride and accept defeat, even though he probably can't 100% comprehend the situation and the pain he will feel after. Because after this, Ippo is actually depressed and angry at himself for a while for letting everyone down. Like when he picks at the stain while watching his match with Date, it's supposed to symbolize the stain this loss puts on his record and how it won't ever go away. So, his first loss is really hard to watch. Even though the scene and the music is very uplifting, and since it cuts deep, deeper than any blade, you can't help but feel flabbergasted. Vork telling Ippo goodbye at the airport after his loss to Sendo really did feel like an end to his character, which I'm glad it wasn't. But, if this was his last ever scene, it would have been a perfect send-off, even if it was a bit tragic, because of how unjust his circumstances were, just because he didn't and couldn't fit into the world of professional boxing. No matter how good he was. Just because he was a foreign fighter, which might be an allegory for racism, I'm not too sure. But honestly, this and number 5 are interchangeable, and the fact that the first ED of the series is playing amplifies the situation. And if I were to rank EDs, this one's easily the best, no contest, and it makes sense why it usually plays during soul-crushing moments and the most uplifting moments. The second Takamura beat Brian Hawk and became a world champion really was one of the highest peaks of the series, as the stakes were immense and everything felt earned when it was over. My favorite part is seeing the Kamigawa gym boys running up in slow motion to congratulate him while the music ascends in a glorious way. And to many, this is the most emotional moment of the show, but in typical Takamura fashion, the moment is somewhat short-lived, because he starts saying dumb things to the audience, which juxtaposes Brian Hawk and what he did at their press conference, and as for that, it's third place. Ippo beating Sendo for a second time and becoming the Japanese featherweight champion is, in the moment, the pinnacle of accomplishment. And while it wasn't for the biggest title, the stakes still felt the highest, other than Ippo's last match, but there was just so much on the line for that one. And the first ED plays in the background, which, come to think of it, all of these scenes have had great music to accompany their scene, which is just not what happens in the number 1 spot because it's not in the anime. But I like how this scene is forever immortalized and ended with a picture, which reminds me of a postcard memory if you know what that is. But if you don't, it is meant to serve the same use as a picture to forever keep that one scene immortalized. But even though it wasn't very common, even Hajime no Ippo used postcard memories. Finally, we are at number 1, and it isn't a clip from the anime like I said earlier, but rather chapter 1206 from the Hajime no Ippo manga, and I will try to explain why this is where it is. There's a great use of quiet in this chapter. It's just the aftermath of Ippo's third loss and his last match, where Kamigawa and Ippo have a retrospective over Ippo's career, while Ippo is being walked home, and that's just all that this chapter is. So it really hurts because we know this is the end for his career, and that his journey is over. Well, at least for now. But seeing how Ippo and Coach Kamigawa don't really have regret about how far they have gotten together, to the point where you could tell Coach Kamigawa sees Ippo like a son, And while every loss Ippo has taken hurts to watch, this is the most painful one to look back on for this moment. But I'm not mad about it. This one scene alone, while still dreadful to see the state Ippo is in, is still very hopeful for things to come. And that last question, Coach Kamagawa asks Ippo if he enjoyed boxing, and Ippo replies with, of course, with absolutely no regrets, really hits the fields beyond belief. And while Ippo returning to boxing might ruin this scene, and the weight behind it, I will always look back on this and know that it's never too late to take the next step forward for yourself. Well, that was depressing. This video was very hard to make, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you want to support me in making more Hajime no Ippo content, you could like or subscribe. But if you think I missed a moment, then you should let me know in the comments. And on that note, this is Mex signing off. It's been real.